It was night time, and a deep silence had taken over the entire city. Small, twinkling stars were visible in the sky, and the ground was bathed in a strange stillness. The streets were lit by the soft glow of the moon, almost like it was trying to hide some old secret. John, a young boy, often sat in his room at night, watching movies. He would get lost in the glow of the blue light and travel to a new world. But tonight, something strange was happening. Suddenly, an unknown number appeared on John's phone screen. As soon as he answered the call, a mysterious voice came through. "John, something is coming after you, very close." John looked at his phone screen in surprise. "Who is this?" he wondered. But there was no response from the other end. He leaned in again to take another look at the screen. The voice wasn't something that seemed like a prank, it felt like it came from somewhere dark, almost like a whisper from an old castle. John hung up the phone and planned to go back to sleep. But little did he know, this night was about to bring something else for him. He lay down on his bed, but before closing his eyes, he took one last look around his room. Something felt odd, a shadow, silently moving on the wall. As soon as John closed his eyes, he took a deep breath and got lost in the quiet of the night. But then, suddenly, a thought crossed his mind, that shadow, was it real? His eyes opened again, and in the darkness of the room, nothing was visible. He got out of bed and started moving towards the light switch near the bed. But then, he stopped. A strange cold breeze was flowing in the room, as if a window had been opened, but all the windows were closed. John's heart began to race. He looked around the room again, this time trying to angle his view in a way that he wouldn't miss anything. Suddenly, in the corner of the room, he saw a figure. It was a black shadow, slowly moving along the wall. The shadow was completely silent, and in the deep silence, it seemed to grow even darker. John's body started to tremble, and he moved towards the door. But as soon as he grabbed the door handle, he heard a sharp noise. It sounded like something had been dragged across the floor of his room, or maybe someone was pushing something. John opened the door, and the cold air outside made his skin tingle. But as soon as he stepped outside, a strange feeling crept over him, as if someone was following him. He hurried down the stairs, but the shadow from the room seemed to be following him, slipping through the cracks of the door. John looked back, but there was nothing there. Yet, he knew he wasn't alone. John took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "It's just my mind playing tricks on me, nothing's there." But when he turned around again, he felt it, something was getting closer to him. He quickly sped up and stepped outside the house. The cool air outside gave him a little relief, but inside, there was a strange fear hiding. He could hear footsteps, as if someone was following him. John tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, but the sound kept following him, like a shadow walking behind him. His eyes scanned the street, and then they stopped on a strange figure. The figure was dressed in all black, silently walking along the side of the road, and he couldn't hear any footsteps. John's heart began to race. He immediately started walking towards where he had seen the shadow. As he got closer, he felt that the shadow wasn't following him, it was watching him. "What is this?" John whispered. His heart pounded in double fear. He stopped, but the shadow had already disappeared. John now realized that he was being chased by something that would never end. He quickened his pace and rushed to get back to his house. But as soon as he opened the door, another strange sound reached his ears. It was the same voice he had heard from the unknown number earlier. "John, you shouldn't be here." John's mind went blank. He immediately took out his phone and tried to check the number, but this time it had vanished. A cold gust of wind hit him, and he quickly shut the door. He felt a strange tingle run through his body, like an invisible force was touching him. John turned on the room light, but it still felt like someone was in his room. Then, from the crack of the door, a whisper was heard. But this whisper didn't sound human. It was a venomous voice, echoing directly in his mind. "This is just the beginning, John." A cold jolt ran through John's body, as if something was touching him. He quickly glanced around the corners of the room, but there was nothing there. The light in the room flickered for a moment, then started glowing again. As soon as the light returned to normal, John heard another whisper coming from the crack in the door. "John, you shouldn't be here." His heart began to race, and he immediately opened the door, trying to step outside. But as soon as he stepped out, the scene outside felt strange. The road he once knew was no longer the same. The familiar path he recognized was now covered in a deep, eerie darkness. The tree branches along the roadside were twisted and interwoven, and a strange, cracking sound filled the air. The same voice he had heard earlier echoed in his mind. He knew something was very wrong, and he could feel it. John took a step outside, and just as he moved forward, a small leaf fell under his foot and broke apart. He quickly bent down to look at it. The leaf wasn't ordinary. It was an old, dry, and dark leaf, one that might have been lying there for years. He picked it up and slipped it into his pocket, wondering who had placed it there and why it had fallen at his feet. His heart was still pounding, and a question ran through his mind. Is all of this a dream, or is something else going on? He stood there for a while, then decided he would face whatever was happening. He started walking down the road, and as he did, his eyes were drawn to a dark tree ahead, under which sat an old, torn-up chair. John's heart raced faster. He took slow, careful steps toward the tree. As soon as he touched the chair, a shiver ran through his hand. The chair had never been there before, and it wasn't placed in any usual spot. "This is all strange," John muttered. His mind was working from all angles, wondering if this chair had something to do with the strange voices he had been hearing. Then, another whisper came, and it was from the same unknown number. "John, this is the place where your story ends." John's heart froze. He immediately began touching the ground beneath the tree. As soon as his hand made contact with the earth, a sharp wave of pain shot through his body. He quickly pulled his hand back, and before him appeared a bizarre sight. There was a crack in the ground, and from it came a sound, as if someone from within was calling him. His heart raced. He quickly turned around, but the path he had come from was gone. A long stretch of darkness stood before him, and he had no idea where to go next. John's heart was racing uncontrollably. He turned around, but the road he had come from was now gone. All that stood before him was a thick, deep darkness. He nervously stepped forward, feeling as though an invisible force was pulling him in. With each step, his breath grew faster. He knew deep down that he had somehow gotten caught in this mysterious trap, and now, there was no way out. The sound of his footsteps echoed in his ears, like someone was following him. Suddenly, he heard a soft whisper, growing closer. He froze in place and quickly scanned his surroundings. "What is that?" he muttered, unknowingly speaking out loud. "John. John." The voice carried a deep secret, as though it was coming from another world. John's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned his gaze toward the trees. He moved toward the trees, and as soon as he stepped closer to one, he noticed a crack in the ground, like there was a tunnel beneath the earth. John took a step forward, trying to get a better look at the crack. As he peered inside, a cold chill ran through his body. There was a red glow coming from within, so bright it almost hurt his eyes. "What is this?" John whispered softly, but his voice faded, as if something had silenced him. Suddenly, another voice reached his ears. It was soft, yet filled with intense fear. "This is your destiny, John. Now you must choose this path." The crack in front of him seemed to deepen, and an invisible force began pulling him further. He tried to look back, but he knew there was no point in going back now. He bent down to look into the crack, and saw movement inside. Shapes, like fish in the dark, were shifting and disappearing in the red light. This image was now burned into his mind forever. "Where am I going?" John asked himself, but the words vanished as soon as he spoke them, as if they had never left his mouth. Then, another voice came, one that seemed to come from deep inside him, as though he had become someone else. "You have to end it all, John." The voice echoed through his mind, and every part of his body was trembling with fear. He knew there was no turning back. Slowly, he took a step forward and entered the crack. As soon as he stepped inside, he felt something soft beneath his feet. He looked down and realized he had reached a place he never wanted to be. There was an old marble slab on the ground, clean and shiny, but stained with blood. It wasn't human blood. It was something else entirely. John's mind felt trapped in an unfamiliar state. He lifted his foot, and as he took another step inside, another whisper filled the air. "You have to end it all, John." The voice came from behind him, and he knew that nothing would let him turn back now. John stepped onto the blood-stained marble, and the sound of his footsteps echoed in the crack beneath him. His heart was pounding fast, like every step he took was revealing a new secret. As he moved forward, he felt an eerie sensation, as though something was watching him from behind. "You can't go back, John." The voice came again, this time much closer, like someone was whispering right into his ear. John quickly glanced around the crack, noticing strange things hidden within it. The ground seemed to go deeper, and in each depth, something moved. It felt like an animal or some other creature was lurking there. John's body trembled, but he forced himself to steady and keep going. As he ventured further, he reached a broken door that seemed to block his path. He opened the door and stepped inside, but he quickly realized this was no ordinary room. The walls were covered with strange markings, symbols from an ancient civilization. There were lines and maps drawn on the walls, and it all seemed beyond his understanding. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, and a wave of intense fear hit him. He was alone in the room, and as he looked around, he noticed that the markings on the walls were now moving. It was as if the symbols were watching him. "What is this?" John's voice came out in a whisper, and a strange pain shot through his body. He immediately tried to open the door again, but it was completely stuck. Then, a laugh echoed around him, coming from all directions. It wasn't the laugh of a human, but of some otherworldly creature tormenting him. John's eyes darted around, and for a moment, he felt like the room itself was changing. The markings on the walls had become clearer, now taking the shape of a human figure. But the figure's eyes were missing, and its laugh was filled with a chilling, eerie sound. "John, how did you get here?" Suddenly, the human-like shape whispered as it moved closer to him. For a moment, John's body froze in fear. "Something is going to happen to you, John. Your destiny brought you here, and now you must face it." The voice was broken and deep, sending a wave of terror through John's heart. He tried to step back, but his legs felt paralyzed, as if they were stuck to the ground. "Now you must face the thing you've always ignored." The figure was right in front of him, and John could see that its eyes were hollow, like a black void from another world. "The thing that has always been with you." The voice echoed again. John's eyes widened in fear. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from above, and another door opened. This new door led to a deep, dark path, completely different from the last one. The path was shrouded in darkness, with a red light coming from within. John's heart raced faster, and he knew that his journey in destiny had now taken a dangerous turn. He took a step forward, but for a moment, he thought about turning back. But then he made up his mind, he had to face this path on his own. John slowly stepped inside the door, and as soon as he did, a cold breeze started blowing from behind it. The wind felt like some invisible thing was whispering close to his body. A strange shiver ran through his body, and he immediately tried to turn around to close the door, but it wouldn't budge at all. He moved further in, and as soon as he stepped into the room, he was faced with a large wall covered in dark marks. These marks looked like some kind of mysterious symbol drawn on the wall. John stared at it closely, and a feeling of fear began to rise in his chest. Suddenly, a whisper came to his ears. "This is your fate, John." The voice was so faint and eerie that John's body involuntarily shuddered. He quickly turned around, but the scene in the room had completely changed. The door was no longer visible, and the room had turned into a vast, dark alley. John immediately took a step forward, and as his feet echoed in the silence, he heard a sound from a tree. This wasn't just any ordinary tree, it sounded like something inside it was moving. The noise was as if the tree's trunks were slowly shifting. John's heart began to race, and he quickly tried to move forward, but an odd barrier appeared in his path. It felt as though an invisible wall was blocking him. "You're not allowed to leave, John." A cold, apathetic voice rang out, and John's body trembled uncontrollably. He turned quickly, but saw no one. His mind started to work. What is all this? Is this a dream? Is any of this real? Suddenly, he felt something soft beneath his feet. He bent down and saw a mysterious, glowing stone lying there, radiating a strange light. It wasn't like any ordinary stone, there was something unique about it. John took a few more steps forward, and as he walked a little further, he felt something strange. It was as though tiny thorns were pricking every part of his body. He quickly turned around, but there was nothing there. Just a dark void, pulling him toward it. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his ears, deeper and more mysterious than before. "This is your final step, John." His heart began to race, and he stopped in his tracks. His breath was shallow, and he felt a wave of panic rise within him. In front of him, there was a glowing light, like an old door opening to a new path. The door was right in front of him, but instead of walking toward it, John felt a strange pull to turn back, as if an invisible force was calling him from behind. But he tried to steady himself and started moving toward the door. As he got closer, his footsteps echoed with a chilling sound. "Are you ready, John?" The voice instantly filled his mind, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. He quickly opened the door, and as soon as he stepped inside, an eerie scene unfolded before him. The room was completely dark, but there were glowing dots appearing here and there, like eyes watching him. John's mind tried to make sense of the mysterious scene, but he quickly realized that this might all be an illusion. He moved further inside, and as he went deeper, he noticed that the dots were surrounding him, like eyes staring directly at him. Suddenly, a mist spread around him, and he felt like someone was whispering in his ear. "We are with you, John." The voice sounded like it was coming from the roots of a tree, and a cold shiver ran through his body. "Do you think you'll escape?" The voice came again, and John quickly turned around. He was completely alone, but the voice kept echoing in his mind, as if it was watching him. He hurried his steps, but as he moved further, he heard another sound. This wasn't a human voice, but something else, drawing nearer. "Your destiny is right in front of you, John." The voice was much closer now, and John's heart raced faster. John quickly turned around and looked at the room, but all he could see were the same glowing dots, like eyes glaring at him. Fear gripped him, and he started walking faster toward the door. But just as he got close, the door suddenly slammed shut, trapping him inside the room. "You won't be leaving now, John," a deep and mysterious voice echoed, sending another cold shiver through his body. His breath grew quick, and his heartbeat raced. He still tried to open the door, but it was completely frozen in place. A wave of pain spread through his body, and it felt like something was dragging him back. John's eyes scanned the room, and suddenly, he spotted something strange. A dark shadow was moving toward him from one side of the room, and it was staring right at him. A fresh wave of fear washed over his body, and the thought crossed his mind, he might never get out of here. John's heart was pounding, and his breathing had become erratic. His eyes scanned the room and stopped at one corner. The shadow that had been hiding there, now slowly moved toward him. As soon as the shadow saw him, John's entire body began to tremble. He quickly turned around, trying to open the door, but it was completely stuck. It felt as if the door wasn't there at all, but rather some powerful force blocking his way, not letting him leave. "You can't leave, John. Your fate is here." The voice was soft, yet terrifying, like it had penetrated deep into his soul. John, trembling, took hesitant steps toward the shadow. His mind was still struggling to understand what was happening, but as he saw the shadow coming closer, an unfamiliar fear gripped him. "Is this real?" John thought to himself. "Or is it just a trick of my mind?" A wave of fear washed over him, paralyzing his body. He moved forward, but with each step, his breath and heartbeat grew faster. As the shadow neared, he quickly lowered his gaze and felt the shadow coming alive, like a creature moving toward him. A faint pain shot through his body, as if sparkling eyes were rising from within him, staring at him. "You have to end here, John." The voice echoed right next to him, and his heart nearly stopped for a moment. John's mind now clearly understood, this was no illusion, but a terrifying reality. He immediately pulled back and tried to run, but the dark shadow surrounded him. His heart raced, and his feet seemed rooted to the ground, as if an invisible force was pulling him back. "Where are you going, John?" The voice rang out again, and John's body was overwhelmed by a cold shiver. Suddenly, he saw a shape within the shadow, a face made up only of glowing eyes. These eyes seemed lifeless, like the cold, deep stare of an inanimate object, piercing straight through to his soul. John's body froze, and his mind tried to make sense of what he was seeing. But his eyes locked on that face, and it was as if thousands of ghosts were staring back at him. A terrifying whisper echoed from that face. "This is the beginning of your fate, John." John's entire body felt broken, and he helplessly tried to kneel, but his legs no longer had any strength. His gaze shifted back to the glowing eyes, now right in front of him. Suddenly, one by one, those eyes began to sink into his body like dark streams, as if they were devouring his very soul. John quickly closed his eyes, feeling as if he were sinking into a deep, consuming darkness. "This is all real, and you have to endure it, John." The voice whispered in his ear, and another wave of pain surged through his body. John's mind was flooded with thousands of questions, but they seemed pointless now, because what he was feeling had become undeniable reality. A reality that wouldn't let him hide anywhere. John quickly picked it up, and as soon as it was in his hand, he felt a strange warmth. He realized the stone seemed to be opening a path, like it was showing the way to something from an ancient past. "What is this?" John whispered, and then put the stone back into his pocket. He moved forward again, and as he took another step, he heard a different whisper this time. "John, the hidden truth inside you will be revealed." John immediately stopped. His mind was trying to make sense of the voice, and he felt like it was pointing toward some hidden truth within him. He searched himself, but despite trying, he found nothing. Suddenly, another voice echoed, very similar to the last one, but this time it was more intense. "John, you will have to choose your own path." The voice was slow and mysterious, and John's body experienced another wave of discomfort with the sound. John's mind felt like it was sinking into a cold wave. He decided to keep going, and as he took a few more steps, he could feel the atmosphere in the room growing even more tense. Suddenly, another door appeared before him, but this door, too, was dark and mysterious. He quickly tried to open it, but he instantly realized that the door was just another illusion. The moment he opened it, he felt that it was a trap designed to deceive him further. "You'll never leave here, John." The voice echoed once more, and John's body shuddered violently at the force of it. John's heartbeat grew even faster. His mind was now realizing that he was trapped, not just physically but mentally as well. He stood in front of the door, and his mind told him that this door was just another illusion, but still, his eyes kept trying to open it. As soon as he opened the door, a strange and mysterious light appeared in front of him, and he was immediately ready to step inside. The door opened, and a whisper echoed through the black void. "Are you really ready?" John's breath caught, and his heart suddenly froze. He didn't want to hear that voice, but his body wouldn't let him retreat. His eyes gazed into the emptiness, and he felt something drawing closer. "You shouldn't have come here, John." The voice had grown deeper and more mysterious, and John's body started trembling with fear. It felt like this was a reality that had taken hold of both his physical and spiritual fate. John tried to move forward, but as soon as he took a few more steps, his body became heavy, like some invisible force was holding him back. A wave of excruciating pain surged through his body, and another whisper reached his ears. "You must face your past, John." John immediately recalled those moments in his life when he made the biggest decisions. The moments when he separated his soul from any innocence. The moments when he left himself to this ruined destiny. "Did you ever think this would happen to you?" The voice echoed again, and another image appeared in John's mind. It was of his parents, who had always tried to give him a better life. But John had never listened to them, and now, he was facing the grim reality of the misfortune he had brought upon himself. Suddenly, a cold wind blew from behind him, and he quickly turned to look. There was no one there, but the mysterious shadow appeared behind him again. It was much closer now, and another wave of pain shot through his body, reaching deep into his veins. "You still don't understand, John," the voice whispered once more inside him. "What's happening to you? This is your destiny." John's mind was now shattered, and he understood that there was nothing he could do to save himself. The trap he was stuck in was so deep and complex that there was no way out. "But I won't give up," John told himself, and he took another step forward. He realized that there was still a force inside him, pushing him to try and escape this trap. As John took more steps, he felt like the world around him was spinning, as if he had gotten caught in a whirlpool. Then, a moment came when he saw another shadow behind him, one that spoke to him. "Don't you understand yet, John?" The voice came again, and another cold wave spread through his body. The shadow came closer and laughed, as if it wanted to pull something out from deep inside John's body and soul. John's eyes were now completely black, and he felt like he was just moments away from a place where there was no distinction between truth and lies. "This is your final test, John," the voice echoed again. "Now, you have to decide." John quickly lifted his gaze and looked at the door. But as soon as he opened it, another scene appeared in front of him. This scene had now twisted his mind between truth and lies, and John realized that he would never escape this trap. John's heart was pounding, like he was falling into a deep hole. He realized that he had put himself into a subconscious state where escaping seemed impossible. The door, which he thought would lead him out, now appeared as another threshold, a glowing line of light with a sharp whisper echoing. "You have to decide now, John." The voice rose again, like it was emerging from the depths. John's heart skipped a beat. He opened the door, and a serious scene unfolded before him. It was something he had never seen before. The place ahead was dark, but inside it, there seemed to be another world. It wasn't the earth, nor the sky, he was in another dimension. John quickly turned around, but the shadow that had been following him was now much closer. Its face was now clear. It was a shapeless, ugly being, with deep, hollow eyes. "Did you ever think this would happen to you?" the shadow asked, and John's heart stopped once again. "No, I never thought I'd end up here," John said in disbelief. The shadow smiled, and then a figure appeared before him. It was from John's past, a scene from when he was happy with his parents. The time when he had no fear and lived carefree. But that time was long gone. He had to let go of that past completely. "You have to choose your fate, John," the shadow said with a dangerous tone. John's mind was still trapped between the past and the present. He knew that if he wanted to understand why he was here, he had to choose his fate. "Why is all this happening to me?" John whispered, and the shadow came closer. "It's your weakness, John. Your cowardice and the fate filled with fear," the shadow replied, and John felt a terrible dizziness in his chest. Suddenly, another door opened before him, and a sad, mysterious voice came from inside. "If you want this to end, you have to cross this door." The voice, pointing towards John, sent another wave of fear through his mind. "But if you open this door, you will have to decide which path you want to take," the voice warned him again. Fear lines formed in John's eyes, but his heart was ready for another choice. He knew that every decision he made would bring him closer to a new reality. But what would that reality be? Would he be able to handle it? The shadow was now right beside him, smiling as it said, "Are you ready?" John didn't respond. He knew that this decision would change the course of his fate. He moved towards the door, and as soon as he took another step, a strange light appeared, sending a wave of brokenness through his body. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. John's mind went into a momentary freeze, and he felt like he was trapped in yet another snare. He also realized that the door he wanted to open was nothing but an illusion. The shadow kept laughing, and John realized that he had lost himself in a reality where every step he took was only leading to his further ruin. "You have to choose now, John, and this time, there will be no way out." John's heart beat one last time, and he said to himself, "I will face it, no matter what." John's heart was pounding, like he was falling into a deep hole. He realized that he had put himself into a subconscious state where escaping seemed impossible. The door, which he thought would lead him out, now appeared as another threshold, a glowing line of light with a sharp whisper echoing. "You have to decide now, John." The voice rose again, like it was emerging from the depths. John's heart skipped a beat. He opened the door, and a serious scene unfolded before him. It was something he had never seen before. The place ahead was dark, but inside it, there seemed to be another world. It wasn't the earth, nor the sky, he was in another dimension. John quickly turned around, but the shadow that had been following him was now much closer. Its face was now clear. It was a shapeless, ugly being, with deep, hollow eyes. "Did you ever think this would happen to you?" the shadow asked, and John's heart stopped once again. "No, I never thought I'd end up here," John said in disbelief. The shadow smiled, and then a figure appeared before him. It was from John's past, a scene from when he was happy with his parents. The time when he had no fear and lived carefree. But that time was long gone. He had to let go of that past completely. You have to choose your fate, John, the shadow said with a dangerous tone. John's mind was still trapped between the past and the present. He knew that if he wanted to understand why he was here, he had to choose his fate. Why is all this happening to me? John whispered, and the shadow came closer. It's your weakness, John. Your cowardice and the fate filled with fear, the shadow replied, and John felt a terrible dizziness in his chest. Suddenly, another door opened before him, and a sad, mysterious voice came from inside. If you want this to end, you have to cross this door. The voice, pointing towards John, sent another wave of fear through his mind. But if you open this door, you will have to decide which path you want to take, the voice warned him again. Fear lines formed in John's eyes, but his heart was ready for another choice. He knew that every decision he made would bring him closer to a new reality. But what would that reality be? Would he be able to handle it? The shadow was now right beside him, smiling as it said, "Are you ready?" John didn't respond. He knew that this decision would change the course of his fate. He moved towards the door, and as soon as he took another step, a strange light appeared, sending a wave of brokenness through his body. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. John's mind went into a momentary freeze, and he felt like he was trapped in yet another snare. He also realized that the door he wanted to open was nothing but an illusion. The shadow kept laughing, and John realized that he had lost himself in a reality where every step he took was only leading to his further ruin. You have to choose now, John, and this time, there will be no way out. John's heart beat one last time, and he said to himself, I will face it, no matter what. John's eyes disappeared into the darkness. As soon as his foot stepped into the door, it felt like he had entered a circle where time and space had no meaning. This place was completely still and silent, as if the world had stopped. What is this place? John asked, his voice trembling, and it vanished into the deep silence. The shadow was standing in front of him, and now there was something different in its smile. It was as if it knew some deep secret that John hadn't yet understood. Don't you get it yet, John? The shadow whispered, and there was a chill in its voice that gripped John's body. This is part of your destiny. John's mind was trapped between the past and the present. He had always been plagued by these questions. Why was he here? Why was all this happening to him? And was it all the result of his own choices? Your fate depends on your own choice, John. The shadow's voice seemed to reach deep into his soul. You chose this path yourself. John shook himself and asked, but is it true? Is all this the result of my mistakes? The shadow's smile deepened. This is your fate, John. And there's no way to escape it. A sharp glint appeared in John's eyes. He was beginning to realize how deep the trap was that he had fallen into. But he still couldn't understand how he would escape this fog. Suddenly, another shadow appeared in front of him. It was John's own reflection, but with deep worry and sadness on its face. It was John himself, but in a terrifying form. What is this? John stepped forward, and the shadow moved toward him. Are you my reflection? No, John, the shadow said. This is your true self. This is the part of you that you've been hiding your whole life. Your greatest fear, your deepest weakness. John's heart raced. It felt like he was facing the greatest fear of his life. This was the truth he had always run away from, and now he was looking at it from behind a door. You have to accept your fate, John, the shadow said. Otherwise, you'll always remain trapped in this web. John's mind was wandering. There was a battle going on inside him, whether to accept his weaknesses or search for another path that could set him free. But where was that path? Where was he going? And could he face this terrifying truth? The shadow took a step forward and, looking at John, said, "This is your choice, John. You have to decide." John closed his eyes for a moment, then took a step forward. He wanted to leave his fear behind, but inside him, there was a deep struggle. Would he fully accept his fate? The door opened again, revealing another scene that felt like a glimpse into a new reality for John. He saw an odd sight inside the door, as if he were entering another world. John took a deep breath and stepped inside the door. As soon as he entered, his body was gripped by a strange stickiness, like he was walking into a place where his desires and freedom no longer existed. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and John's heart echoed with the rhythm of being trapped in another web. He turned around, and the shadow appeared again. "Now, you must take one final step, John," the shadow's voice whispered. "You have to fully accept your fate." A deep silence filled John's soul, and he knew that the path he was walking would eventually lead him to a truth he would find hard to face. "I can't do all this," John said, one last time. The shadow responded with a cold smile, "This is your path, John. There's no way to escape it." John took a deep breath, and then his eyes fixed on the shadow. He now understood that this wasn't just an ordinary journey, this was him facing the biggest secret of his life. "What do you want from me?" John asked, his heart empty. The shadow was silent for a moment, and then its voice carried a quiet depth. "You're hiding something from yourself, John. Your fate holds a truth that you've always been running from." John's heart stopped for a moment, like something inside him was breaking. "What truth?" he asked angrily. "The one you never wanted to know, but it's a part of your destiny," the shadow said, its voice filled with a terrifying truth, like it knew John's greatest weakness. John's heart started racing. Everything he had been feeling was leading him toward this truth. "What have I hidden?" he asked, his voice now filled with helplessness. The shadow shook its head and said, "You've always turned your eyes away from the truth inside you. Your greatest fear is your own weakness, and you've never accepted it." John's mind was shattering. He wanted to understand what this was, but he still couldn't fully grasp it. He had never acknowledged the deep pain inside him, and perhaps now his fate was to bring it to the surface. "Your destiny's secret is hidden within you, John," the shadow's voice was deep and mysterious. "What you've always hidden will force you to face your destiny." A strange silence filled John, as if the beat of his heart and the voice of his mind were echoing in unison. He was filled with fear, but still, something inside him was pushing him to accept his fate. "I don't want to know," John said, tears in his eyes. "I don't want to see this." The shadow took a step forward, getting close to his face. "This is your fate, John. You have to know this truth, whether you're ready or not." Suddenly, another door opened in front of John, and he saw red lines of light. Inside the door was a fog, and mysterious sounds began to echo from it. John's eyes were fixed on the door, and he felt like there was a whisper calling him to face his fate. "This door will take you to the truth, John," the shadow said, and its voice held another deep secret. John closed his eyes and stepped forward. As soon as his foot entered the door, he felt an intense breaking sensation, as if every vein in his body was snapping. "What is this?" John asked helplessly, his voice a whisper that disappeared into the mysterious fog. The shadow said, "This is the beginning of your fear, John. You must face the truth inside you. You must accept your destiny, or you'll remain trapped in this fog forever." A strange silence fell over John, and he knew he couldn't escape this truth. He took another step into the door, and as he entered, he felt himself sinking into a strange fog. Is this really my fate? John asked himself, his heart racing. Suddenly, a light flashed through the fog, and a figure appeared. This figure was the reflection of John's deepest fear. It was the image of his own fear, glowing in his eyes. You must accept this truth, John, the figure said, its voice gripping John's body. John's mind was completely trapped. He knew he had to face this truth, but was he ready? Everything he had forgotten was now coming to the surface. This truth is a part of your destiny, John, the figure said, and its voice whispered, sending chills through John's body. John took a deep breath and opened his eyes. He knew now that his fear had become a reality, and he couldn't escape it. John took a deep breath and moved forward. His eyes were lost in the fog, as though his mind was trying to digest the deep truth he still couldn't understand. The door had closed, and he was now in a world where his fate and fears were tied together. What is this? John asked himself, as he lost himself in the fog. Where am I going? A shadow appeared in front of him, swirling in the fog. It looked like John's own body, but its face had an unusual smile that seemed out of place. John's heart started pounding faster. You're here again? John whispered, as the shadow moved closer and stood before him. The shadow nodded and then whispered, You have to find your path to your destiny now, John. John's mind was still struggling to understand what he was seeing, but he just couldn't make sense of it. His soul felt a strange helplessness. He had asked himself many times what was happening, but his heart couldn't provide an answer. Can you tell me what to do? John asked again. Can I go back? The shadow looked at him seriously and said, There's no way back, John. Fear started to show in John's eyes. But why? Where am I going? With a sad smile, the shadow replied, You have to face the truth inside you, John. You'll have to find a new path through it. John's eyes were lost in the fog. His body felt frozen, and he felt like he might never get out of this world. Everything around him was silent, and now, he had to face his fears. You've always tried to run from your fears, John, the shadow said. Now, it's time to face them. John's heart froze. The uneasiness inside him was growing, and he felt like his fate was about to be decided. Would he accept his fears? Or would he remain trapped in this web forever? Suddenly, another door opened, glowing with a red light. John's eyes were drawn to it. The light was so captivating that he couldn't stop himself from moving toward it. But still, there was a fear inside him, like he was about to step into a place where no one ever returns. What is this? John asked anxiously. Where am I going? The shadow stepped closer and said, This is the door to your destiny, John. Here, your truth will be revealed. John took a deep breath and stepped forward. As soon as he entered the door, he felt a deep silence, and he could hear his own voice. In front of him, a mirror appeared, and in that mirror, he saw his own reflection. But this reflection was different. His face showed a hint of sorrow, as if the deep secrets of his life were being revealed in this mirror. What is this? John said in fear, staring at his reflection. Is this me? The reflection in the mirror changed. His eyes glowed red, and his smile spread in a mysterious, terrifying way. John tried to recognize himself, but this shape was so different. This wasn't the John he knew. This is inside you, John, the reflection said. You've never accepted your fears, and now they've become part of your destiny. John's eyes shattered. He knew now that he had faced the truth inside him. But now he also understood what that truth meant. I don't want this. John said in terror. I shouldn't have to face this. This is your destiny, John, the reflection in the mirror said. You have to accept your truth, or you'll remain trapped in this web forever. Tears filled John's eyes. He knew this was his last chance. Could he face this terrifying truth and change his destiny? Or would he remain stuck in this web forever? John looked into the mirror, and a wave of fear swept through his eyes. What he saw was something he never imagined. His reflection had changed, as if he was meeting another part of his fate. In the mirror, he didn't recognize himself. It was a broken, mysterious version of him, saying something else entirely. This is you, John, the reflection said in the mirror. This is your truth, the one you've always hidden. You never accepted the fear inside you, and now it's with you. John's gaze deepened, as if the biggest truth of his life was unfolding before him. Seeing himself in the mirror only made him feel more scared. His heart raced, as if danger was near. I don't want this. John cried out. This can't be real. The reflection smiled, and its voice echoed, this was always written in your destiny, John. You can never escape. John turned around, as if trying to escape himself, but there was no way out. He was standing in a place where leaving seemed impossible. Will I ever escape? John asked in fear, his heart uncontrollably pounding. The reflection in the mirror laughed, and then a deep whisper was heard, what's inside you will bind you forever. You can't escape it. John shut his eyes, but a new voice rose inside him. It was more powerful, and within its depth was something that frightened him even more. You'll never escape, John, the voice kept pulling him deeper. John opened his eyes and looked around, suddenly his eyes fixed on a door. The door was glowing with a strange light. Without thinking, John took a step toward it. Where will this door lead? John asked himself, and as he stepped forward, another horrifying truth emerged. As he walked toward the door, a voice stopped him. This door isn't part of your destiny, John, a faint voice said. It's only meant to trap you even more. John's heart stopped for a moment, as if his soul had cracked. He took a deep breath and continued walking toward the door, as if accepting his fear. As he neared the door, yet another secret was revealed. This is your truth, John, the voice said. What you've been hiding inside is now coming before you. John's eyes focused on what lay behind the door. There was something else, like he was stepping into a world where his fears and fate were about to be decided. He took one last look at his inner strength, and then tried to open the door. I'll face it, John said to himself, as if he had made up his mind to move forward despite his fear. The door opened, and before him was a room bathed in a red glow. Inside the room, he saw a shadow that resembled him, but it carried an otherworldly, mysterious power. You had to come here, John, the shadow said, its voice deeper than before. John stepped forward, feeling as if he was moving toward a new truth. But he knew that another secret awaited him, one that would push him further into the depths of fear. This is your destiny, John, the shadow said. Now the decision is in your hands. John took a deep breath, then moved closer to the shadow and the environment around it. His heart was pounding, but he knew now that he could never escape this truth. John took another step forward, as if he was sinking deeper into the darkness with every passing moment. The red glow in the room kept growing, and John's eyes were facing a new fear in that strange light. He knew this was the moment when his fate would be decided, but one question remained in his heart. Would he be able to face the truth he had always been running from? What is this? John said to himself, but his voice carried a burden, as if he was growing weaker with every word. The shadow standing before him was now clearer. It looked just like John, but with a terrifying quality that sent chills down his spine. A strange smile spread across its face, and its eyes glowed a deep red, as if it had already recognized the hidden fears inside John. "You've finally come, John," the shadow said. "Now you must understand yourself." John took a deep breath and moved forward. A strange struggle stirred inside him. He knew he couldn't escape this moment anymore, and now, he had to face a new reality. "I've come to understand myself, but what is all this?" John asked. "Why is this happening?" The shadow took a step toward him and said, "This is part of your destiny, John. You must face your fears, or you'll remain trapped in this web forever." John's eyes were shattered, and he realized that his fate couldn't escape this trap. He was lost inside, as if rediscovering himself, but every new truth made him more uneasy. "Can I face this?" John whispered. "Can my destiny change?" The shadow looked at him coldly and said, "You must face it, John. Your destiny lies within you, and you must recognize yourself." John's heart raced, and he took another step. He knew now that he was on a path where turning back was impossible. The darkness within him, the one he had always feared, was now right before him. "You will regret it, John, if you don't face it." The shadow's voice grew deeper, as if it could feel the inner turmoil within John. John's gaze got lost in the red light, and then he took another step. But along with it, a question rose in his mind: can I escape this journey? Before the shadow answered, it said, "This is the door to your destiny, John. When you go inside, you will face a new truth." John took another step toward the door, and as he neared it, he realized that it was different. Its structure, its color, and its feel were all unlike anything he had ever seen. John's heart was racing now, and he started wondering if stepping through this door could change his destiny. "You must step through it, John," the shadow said. "This is the biggest decision of your life." John tried to push the door open, and as it did, a cold breeze brushed against his face. Inside, he saw something he had never seen before. A dark room with only a table in the center, and on it, an open book. Bloodstains covered its pages, and a terrifying silence surrounded it, as if the room hid a deep secret. "What is this?" John asked as he took a step inside. "Is this my destiny?" A voice came from the book, like a thrilling whisper. "This is the secret of your destiny, John. You must complete this book, or you will remain trapped in this web forever." John's heart stopped for a moment, and his gaze fixed on the book. He knew that in this moment, he was about to make a new decision, but he had no idea what the serious consequences of it might be. Would he open this book? Or would he remain trapped in his fate forever? John's eyes were fixed on the pages of the book, and there was a strange pull inside him, as if the pages themselves were drawing him in. A cold whisper came from the blood-stained pages of the book. John's heart raced as if he desperately wanted to uncover the secrets hidden within the book, but he was also terrified. "Is this right?" John said to himself. "What will happen if I open this book?" His mind was filled with questions about the book, and he was trying to figure out whether it was part of his destiny or just another trap set to ensnare him. "It's time for you to make a decision, John," the voice echoed again, now vibrating deep inside him. "Your destiny is written in this book, and you must face it." John's heart was pounding, and he took a deep breath. Then, he reached his hands toward the book. As soon as he started turning the pages, a cold gust of wind hit his face, and he felt as though a powerful force was drawing near. With each page he turned, the fear inside him grew. The pages were covered in strange symbols and images that made his body shiver. Every word and image in the book seemed connected to the beat of his heart. "What is this?" John asked himself, and then he turned another page. There was a mysterious symbol on the page, and as soon as he looked at it, he heard a terrifying voice. You must understand the meaning of this symbol, John. The voice came in a deep whisper, as if someone was pushing him forward. John's body started to tremble, and holding the book, he felt as though this book was about to unlock every door of his destiny. The pages changed again, revealing a horrifying scene. It was a world where no human had survived. "Is this my destiny?" John said uncertainly, as if he was trying to accept that what was in this book would change him forever. The image had now settled deep in his mind. He was in a world where the tree branches were dead, and blood flowed across the ground. There were no humans here, only silence and stillness. "You must face this world, John," the voice echoed again, and its depth shook John to his core. John opened the book further, and now another secret was revealed. There was a magical map in the book, showing a path leading toward a terrifying tunnel, with a red light shining at the end of it. "Where does this tunnel lead?" John said to himself, his voice shaking. He knew the end of the tunnel led to a dangerous truth. "This is your path, John," the voice came again. "You must walk this path, or you will remain trapped in this web forever." John's heart was racing, and he understood that if he didn't walk this path, he would be stuck in the terrifying trap he was facing forever. He thought about closing the book, but something unexpected stopped him. The pages of the book began to turn again, and as he flipped to another page, a new symbol appeared, sending a chill down his spine. This symbol seemed to reveal the biggest secret of his life. "What is this?" John said in a daze, his eyes fixed on the symbol. "Why this symbol?" "This symbol is the voice of your heart, John," the voice spoke again, and another whisper echoed inside him. "This symbol is showing you that you must face the truth." John gripped the book tightly, and as a final step, he began walking toward the red light at the end of the tunnel. He knew that after this journey, nothing would ever be the same, and whatever truth lay ahead, he couldn't deny it. John stepped into the tunnel. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the eerie silence, as if someone else was with him, but he couldn't see anyone. Every corner of the tunnel was filled with darkness, and a cold breeze was brushing against his face. With each step he took, his heartbeat quickened, as if he were trying to escape from some deep, hidden fear. "Is this really the right path?" John said to himself. As he walked deeper into the tunnel, he felt like someone was following him, like he was never truly alone. His mind was filled with fears from his past, and his breath became faster. Strange, bizarre patterns were drawn on the walls of the tunnel, changing with each step he took. It felt as though these patterns were pulling him deeper into something. For a moment, he stopped and tried to steady his breath, but then he heard a sound echoing in the tunnel, like something spinning inside his mind. "What is this?" John tried to take a step back, but as he turned around, the tunnel walls suddenly lit up with a strange glow, revealing an empty room in front of him. A shadow hung from the ceiling of the room, its dim red face staring right at him. "Do you want to go back, John?" The voice was deep, mysterious, and sounded like a whisper, as if the walls themselves were speaking to him. John's heart raced. He realized he had entered a room that felt like it belonged to another world, a place where the secrets of his destiny were about to be revealed. He had come out of the tunnel, but now he was in a place where the real test of his life had begun. "Where is this place?" John took a deep breath and asked, but then suddenly he felt himself walking toward a door in the middle of the room. The door looked completely different from anything he had seen before. The door was sealed, with a symbol carved on it. The symbol was unfamiliar to John, but his heart told him that this was the symbol that revealed something about his destiny. "Is this the door?" John took a step forward, and as soon as he touched it, there was a loud bang, and the door opened on its own. The light inside was extraordinary. It was soft, mysterious, and there was a strange fragrance in the air that John had never smelled before. He stepped inside, and as he did, it felt like he was walking into a deep dream. As soon as he entered the room, a new scene appeared before him. It was a forest, where the branches of the trees were broken, and dark streams of blood flowed across the ground. Under his feet, there was nothing but emptiness, as if the earth itself had vanished. "What is all this?" John said in disbelief, and then from the roots of a tree, a shadow appeared. The shadow moved closer and stared at him, saying, "This is your destiny, John." John froze. He knew that this place was something he never wanted to face. The shadow took another step forward and said, "You must understand the secret of this place, or you will be trapped here forever." John's heart was racing. He was terrified, and his mind was so full of fear that he could barely handle it. Then, in a single moment, an old tree appeared before him. Beneath it, there was a chest, and on the chest, another symbol was carved. "What is this chest?" John asked himself, and immediately tried to open it. As soon as he opened the chest, he found another book inside, but this book was glowing with a strange light. "Why this book?" John said as he held the book in his hands. "Does this book hold the answers to my questions?" John opened the book, and as soon as he read the first page, he saw a new scene. It was the same tree, but this time, blood was flowing from its roots, and the blood was flowing toward John's path. "Is this the way?" John opened the book further, and as he turned to the next page, another symbol appeared before him. "What is this?" John whispered, holding the book. "What does this symbol mean?" John opened the book further, and for the first time, he felt that there was something else, something extraordinary, something unexpected waiting for him. As he turned the pages of the book, a scene emerged before his eyes that was so far from reality, it left him stunned. "What is this?" John asked himself, a strange feeling rising in his mind. The scene showed a city that he had never seen before. It was a sad, dark, and mysterious place, where destruction and despair ruled. The streets of the city were eerily silent, as if every human being had vanished. "Where is this?" John clutched the book tightly, asking, but the book gave him only silence. A frightening whisper echoed in his ears, and he realized he was not alone in this city. There was something hidden in every corner of the city, something that could pose a danger to him. Suddenly, another whisper came from the pages of the book. "This city is pulling you in, John. You must learn its truth, or you'll be trapped here forever." Holding the book, John felt a storm of questions rise in his mind. Why is this happening? This city, this book, these whispers. Is all of this a part of my destiny? As he flipped to the next page, a new symbol appeared, more vivid than before. The symbol looked like the roots of a tree, with streams of blood flowing through them. A wave of fear rushed through John's heart, and he instinctively began to step back. Is this tree trying to tell me something? John thought, and then quickly turned his gaze away from the book to the tree. Beneath the tree was another chest, closed like the previous one, but this time, it had a more complex symbol carved on it. His heart raced as he moved toward the chest. As soon as he opened it, a red light poured out, illuminating his face. A deep voice began to echo in his mind. "This is the light that will show you the truth, John," the voice whispered. A chill ran down his spine as the light seemed to draw him in, as if it was pulling him toward it. Is this the truth I've been waiting for? John wondered, and then moved toward the light. As soon as he stepped into the light, a new scene appeared. It was the same city described in the book, but now John could see that every corner of the city was filled with unease, fear, and pain. What does this city represent now? John asked himself, and then he saw a new truth. In the streets of the city, there was a veil, just a step away from him, and to remove it, John had to conquer his own fear. He began to understand that behind that veil was another world, one where the line between truth and illusion had blurred. "You must remove the veil, John," the voice echoed again, its whisper deep and knowing, as if it understood his fate. John decided to pull the veil away. But as he did, a terrifying sight unfolded before him. It was the figure of a person, but this person was faceless, silent, and unreal, like a ghost. Its face was hidden in shadow, and a cold breeze seemed to emanate from its body. "Is this a person?" John whispered in fear, and then moved closer to the faceless figure. As he got nearer, the figure lifted its head, and in its eyes, John saw a truth so powerful that it shook his heart. "This is your destiny, John," the figure spoke in a cold voice. "This is the truth, but you must face it." John's heart raced. He wondered how he would handle this truth. The faceless figure was now standing before him, and there was only one path left, to face this truth. "Am I ready to face the truth?" John thought, and as he took another step forward, the figure stepped toward him, a strange smile appearing on its face. "This is the moment, John," the figure said. John's heart was racing, and the faceless figure was now standing before him. The depth in the figure's eyes was beyond anything John could have ever imagined. There was a cruelty hidden in its smile, and as it stepped closer, it spoke, "The path you've chosen has no return, John." John paused for a moment, looking at the figure, then tried to step back. But the faceless figure blocked his way. "You must face the truth, no matter what," it said, its voice cold and merciless. "What truth?" John asked helplessly, anxiety creeping into his voice. He couldn't understand what kind of truth he was being confronted with. "It's the truth you've always ignored," the figure said, then revealed another mark with its hand. It looked like the roots of a tree, but with blood flowing through them. "This mark shows you that you must learn the secret of this land, or you'll be trapped here forever." A whirlwind of questions began to swirl in John's mind. What is the secret of this tree? Why is there blood flowing through it? What does this mark mean? Worry surged in his eyes, and his steps faltered. "This tree will reveal the truth to you, but you must decide if you truly want to know it," the figure said, before suddenly vanishing as if it had never been there. John's gaze became empty as he moved toward the mark on the ground. As he approached the mark, another scene emerged before him. It was the same city he had seen before, but now it was completely different. The shadows around him had grown darker, and there was a terrifying whisper in the air. "What's happening?" John thought to himself. "Why is this city changing?" His heart was pounding, and his eyes searched desperately for something behind the shadows. Suddenly, another shadow of a person appeared before him. This person was completely different from the one he had seen before. In their hands, they held an empty bowl, with blood dripping from it. "This is the bowl that will give you the truth you're searching for," the person said. Their voice had a strange depth, and in their eyes was a light that stirred a storm of fear in John's heart. John's heart raced even faster as he wondered, is this the path I've been following? Is this the truth I need to know? "You must see the blood in this bowl, John, to reach the truth," the figure said, pointing toward the bowl. John thought, is this bowl meant for me? And why is the blood flowing? His eyes were fixed on the bowl, and as he reached out to take it, a wave of intense pain shot through his body. He quickly dropped the bowl, and in front of him, another scene appeared. It was a dark room, with a strange door. Behind the door, a bright light shone, but the light was so intense that John struggled to face it. He approached the door and tried to open it, but as soon as he did, a loud explosion echoed, and the door slammed shut by itself. "What was that?" John said, startled, his eyes fixed on the door. Suddenly, another shadow appeared behind the door, and it was terrifying. The shadow moved toward John, and the same cold breeze that he had felt before seemed to emanate from it. "Did you open this door?" the shadow asked, its voice dripping with venom. "You must learn the secret of this door, or you'll become a part of this fear forever." John's heart raced once more. His eyes were fixed on the door, and he realized that opening it meant deciding his fate. Should I open this door again? John wondered, and then took a step forward. John took a step towards the door. His heartbeat quickened, as if he were about to make a life-changing decision. As he approached the door, his mind was filled with questions. Should I open this door? Is there something behind it that I can't handle? As soon as he was near the door, a cold breeze swept through his body. When he tried to open it, it felt as if the door was allowing him to enter. John held his breath and began to push the door open. It slowly creaked open, and with it, a deep darkness seemed to swirl before his eyes. What is this? John asked himself, and the door fully opened. Before him was a vast room, lit by a faint, hazy light. The room was cluttered with old books and ancient items, as if it had been sealed off for centuries. John's heart raced. He knew there was something hidden here that could change him forever. This room, what could be here? John muttered, stepping forward. Suddenly, the room's light brightened sharply, and then a strange voice echoed. Why have you come here? A shiver ran down John's spine. The voice seemed to come from the sky or from somewhere else, but he could clearly sense it wasn't human. I want to know the truth, John said in a trembling voice. I want to understand what all of this is. Whatever you wish to know, you will find it, but the answer isn't simple, the voice replied, and John felt like it was coming from deep within the room. John took a step further and reached the center of the room. There, he found another door, but this one was black, marked with a strange symbol. His eyes were fixed on the symbol, and then he walked towards it. As soon as he touched the door, it opened by itself, revealing another scene. This new scene was a test for John. It was the same dark city he had seen before, but now it looked even more terrifying. The streets were eerily silent, and there wasn't a soul in sight. The city carried a specific scent that made John feel uneasy. Why is this city changing? John asked, overwhelmed. Then, he walked deeper into the streets. As he turned into an alley, a shadow appeared before him. The shadow moved slowly toward him, and his heart raced. What is this? John said, fear creeping into his voice. The fear within you has become part of this place, John, the shadow spoke, its voice heavy. This city tells your story, and you must complete it. A chill ran through John's body. My story? He asked. Is this city my fate? Yes, your fate is hidden here, John, the shadow replied, then slowly faded away. John's eyes were fixed on the darkness of the alley, and he began to think about the city again. He wanted to know what was hidden here, but the fear he felt made it hard to take another step. Just then, another voice rang out. You must face your fear, John. Your fate depends on your courage. John thought to himself, is this all real? Have I become a part of this city? The city had now become a new reality, and John had to understand its truth. He took a step forward, deciding to walk deeper into the streets. With each step, his inner strength weakened, but one question kept repeating in his mind, is this true? Will this city give me the truth I'm seeking? Meanwhile, another shadow appeared before him, but this one was different. It was a shadow of John himself, with the same fear in its eyes that John had been feeling. Are you what your fate wants you to be? The shadow asked. For a moment, John's heart stopped. What is this? He asked. The shadow smiled. This is your fate, John, and now you must make your decision." John stood facing the shadow. His heart was racing, and for a few moments, he couldn't move a single step. The shadow, in his own form, was the terrifying reality that John had always felt deep inside. "Is this the truth?" John asked, his voice trembling with unease and fear. "Can I really handle all of this?" The shadow, in John's form, spoke, "You have to make that decision for yourself, John. The fear inside you brought you here. Now, you must face it." John's eyes were fixed on the shadow, as if he were looking for something within it. He wanted to understand what the shadow meant and why it had appeared before him. "Who are you?" John asked in a deep voice. The shadow smiled and said, "I am the truth you've always feared. I am your fate, hidden inside you. The more you look into my eyes, the more you'll understand yourself." John's gaze deepened, and he began to feel lost in the shadow. It represented his deepest fears, and John was trying to confront it. Suddenly, the shadow disappeared and reappeared as a different one. This new shadow was different, with a terrifying, bright light emanating from its body. "Do you still think you can escape this fear?" the shadow asked, its voice broken and deep. John's heart raced faster. "Can I really escape this fear?" he wondered, then took a step forward. He wanted to know where all this would lead and what the outcome would be. The shadow now showed him another door, completely black, with a streak of blood running down it. John paused for a moment, staring at the door. "This door, where will it lead?" John asked himself. The shadow replied, "This door will reveal the truth inside you, John. You have to face it, no matter how afraid you are." John decided to open the door. As soon as he did, another scene appeared before him, an even deeper mystery. It was a dark room, with broken glass and streaks of black smoke swirling. A voice echoed through the room, resonating in John's ears. "Why have you come here?" The voice sounded threatening, and John felt like he was facing a great trial. "I want to know the truth," John replied, his voice full of anxiety and fear. "What is all of this?" The voice spoke again, "Your time has come, John. Now, you must choose your fate." John's eyes were fixed on the room. His heart was racing, and his mind was filled with questions. Is this the truth? Do I really have to choose my fate? He took a step forward, and as he entered the room, another shadow appeared before him. This one was new to him, and its eyes glowed with a terrifying intensity. The shadow moved closer and whispered in John's ear, "You must face this, John, and defeat your fear, or you'll be trapped here forever." A shiver ran through John's body. Fear and anxiety surged through his eyes, but he made up his mind to confront the fear. Is this my fate? John wondered in his heart, and took another step forward. At that moment, a tree appeared before him, mysterious and eerie. The tree's roots were deep, and a streak of blood was flowing down its bark. John's gaze was fixed on the tree, feeling a strong need to uncover its secret. "What is this tree?" John whispered, and as he stepped closer, a terrifying voice came from the tree, "Do you want to know the secret of this tree?" John paused for a moment and answered, "Yes, I need to know the secret of this tree." John took a step towards the tree. The sight of it had become another mysterious challenge for him. The tree's roots were so deeply embedded in the ground that it seemed as though they were reaching into another world. Blood-like streaks were flowing down its bark, as if the tree itself was a reflection of a vengeful spirit. "This tree, what is it trying to tell me?" John asked himself, moving closer to the tree. As soon as John approached, a strange gust of wind blew, and from the branches came a sad sound, almost as if the tree itself was in pain. His heart raced, and his mind was flooded with questions. Can this tree really tell me something? Or is it just part of my fear? You have to go inside, John, a soft voice echoed, coming from the tree itself and resonating in his ears. The secrets inside you will be revealed. John paused for a moment to think, then took another step towards the tree. As soon as he touched the bark, a cold wave ran through his body. Suddenly, a mysterious light began to shine from the tree's roots. It was so bright that it made John feel a strange sensation throughout his body. What is this? John asked fearfully, trying to step back, but his legs felt frozen in place. At that moment, a door appeared from the tree's roots, completely black. A wave of intense fear surged through John, but at the same time, he felt a strong urge to discover what hidden truth lay beyond that door. You have to go through this door, John, the voice said again. You must face this truth. His heart raced as he stepped closer to the door. When he opened it, another scene appeared before him. It was a strange room, filled with black smoke and complete silence. The room carried an eerie sadness, as though it had been abandoned for decades. Where am I? John whispered, his voice echoing and fading into the room. Just then, another voice spoke, Why have you come here? John turned around and saw a shadow standing before him. It wasn't just any shadow, it was his own reflection. But this reflection had a deep sadness on its face, and its eyes glowed with a dangerous intensity. Who are you? John asked, his heart racing. I am your truth, John, the shadow spoke. I am here to show you your fate. John's mind was now tangled with confusion. My fate? He asked. Why are you in my form? Why are you standing before me? Because you must face your fate through me, the shadow said, and then its form became blurry, as though it was merging with John's own reality. John took a step forward, and as he moved towards the shadow, another scene emerged before his eyes. It was the image of a deep abyss, with some faint sounds coming from it. What is this? John whispered. Is this abyss my fate? Yes, this abyss is part of your fate, the voice replied. And as John stepped towards the abyss, another cold wave surged through his body. He wanted to turn back, but he continued forward. You must make it out of this, John, the voice said, its tone growing more intense. John took another step, and suddenly, a loud noise came from the bottom of the abyss. You can't turn back, John. Your fate has brought you this way. His heart was pounding, and he realized that there was no going back now. He was sinking deeper into the abyss, and all that filled his mind was one question: will this path lead me to the truth? Your fear will complete this path, the voice echoed, and John stepped forward once again. As John stepped into the abyss, a strange shiver ran down his spine. With every step, his heart beat faster, as if he were moving toward a deep secret. At the bottom of the pit, something was pulling him in, but he couldn't tell if it was real or just another fear playing tricks on him. You must go deeper, John, a voice said. It sounded eerily similar to his own but carried an unsettling edge. Only through this path will you uncover your destiny. John's heart pounded harder. He forced himself to take another step, descending further into the chasm. Each step felt like he was moving farther away from the world he knew, leaving him consumed by fear and unease. What is this? John whispered, his voice echoing faintly into the void. As he moved forward, another scene unfolded before him. It was a cold, dark room, shrouded in shadows. Nothing was clear, yet a voice echoed within it, soft but filled with a mysterious pull. Are you ready? The voice asked. Do you have the strength to endure this? John blinked, his eyes trying to adjust to the thick darkness. He could feel something watching him, a hidden presence, like unseen eyes piercing through the void. Why did you stop? the voice demanded, sharper now, tinged with impatience. You must face your fear, or you'll remain trapped here forever. John pushed his fear aside and stepped forward. As he entered the room, a door appeared ahead of him. It was black, with an eerie glow surrounding its edges. He moved closer and opened the door. A cold gust of air hit him, sending chills through his body. On the other side was another room, cloaked in darkness, with a faint, hazy light glowing in the distance. John stepped into the room, and as he did, the light grew brighter. A new voice emerged from the light. You must find your way out of this place, John. John's heart raced. He wanted to understand what was happening and where he was headed. Is this real? He whispered. This is part of your destiny, John, the voice replied, its tone carrying a strange vibration. This journey is meant to reveal the truths buried deep within you. Taking another step, John found himself standing at the center of the room. There, he saw a tree. It was black, its roots oozing blood. He approached the tree and touched its bark, sending a cold wave through his body. What is this tree? John asked, his heartbeat quickening. Is this also part of my fate? The tree answered with a chilling voice. Yes, John. This tree represents the truth within you. You must face your fear, or you will remain trapped here forever. John's body trembled. He was desperate to uncover the meaning of the tree and the path he was on. Do I have to confront the truth this tree holds? He asked. Blood dripped steadily from the tree's roots, and John felt as though he was entering another circle of mystery. His body grew numb, and waves of fear and anxiety swept over his mind. Are you ready, John? The voice asked again. Your destiny has brought you here. John took another step, and from the tree's roots, another door emerged. He opened it, revealing yet another dark room. This room was void of clarity, its air cold and heavy. A sharp wind brushed past him, and John's heart beat wildly. What is this? He whispered. This is your destiny, John, the voice answered, now with an unsettling hiss. John stepped forward once again, entering the room, uncertain but determined to uncover the truth waiting for him. As John opened the door within the tree, he stepped into another dark room. The room was completely void of light, filled only with silence and an unsettling aura of fear hanging thick in the air. The door shut behind him with a faint thud, and a broken whisper echoed through the space, as if someone, or something, was present. Are you ready? Came a soft yet eerie voice. It sounded close, so close it felt like it was right above his head. John's heart pounded as his mind struggled to make sense of what was happening. He tried to move forward in the room's cold atmosphere, but it felt as though some strange force was pulling him toward the center. There, in the middle of the room, stood a large mirror glowing faintly. Slowly, John moved closer to the mirror. As he approached, the reflections it displayed began to shift, revealing his deepest fears and hidden truths. The mirror seemed to hold a gateway to another realm. What is this? John whispered, his voice trembling, loud enough to echo back to him. The mirror suddenly gleamed brightly, showing John his own reflection, but not as he knew it. His face appeared darkened, his eyes filled with sorrow and a strange, bloodshot intensity. Who are you? John asked, his voice shaking as he addressed his reflection. But the reflection's eyes held a terror he could never forget. For a moment, the mirror stood still. Then a sharp, chilling laughter erupted from it, sending shivers down John's spine. The laughter was distorted and haunting, freezing John in place. Don't you remember? Said a voice from the mirror. This is your fear, John. You've been trapped in it all along, and now it's time to confront it. John's body trembled. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to be a part of it, he yelled, his voice breaking the oppressive silence. The reflection in the mirror began to distort, its face twisting with anguish. Blood-red lines streaked across its eyes. "This is your fear, John. You can't escape it." As John stared, another vision emerged from the mirror, a scene from his life, one he couldn't recognize. It showed a sorrowful evening where John seemed to be making some of the biggest decisions of his life. In the background stood a tree, the same tree he'd seen in his dreams. Where did that tree come from? John asked, his voice barely a whisper. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the voice returned. "This tree is your fear, John. Its truth lies within you, and only you can bring it to light." John's heart raced, and his mind spun with confusion. "Can you tell me why I keep seeing this tree?" he asked. The mirror's surface shimmered again, showing an image of a face, a smiling face. It was John's own, yet something about it was deeply unsettling. "You must face your destiny, John," the voice said. "Everything you are is a part of that destiny." A faint glimmer of resolve flickered in John's eyes. He whispered to himself, "Can I truly face this truth?" At that moment, another tree appeared within the mirror, and with it, John felt a new understanding unfold. "This tree reflects your destiny, John. Facing it will reveal your true self." Summoning his courage, John stepped forward, and the mirror's surface blurred. As he took another step, a new door emerged before him. It was black, and from within, a cold gust of air swept out, carrying a sense of foreboding. "Are you ready?" the voice asked once more. "What lies beyond this door is where your fear will guide you." John's heart beat wildly, but he reached out and pushed the door open. John pushed the door open and stepped inside. As soon as he crossed the threshold, a chilling gust of wind brushed against his face. The air felt strangely dry, as if it had been trapped behind the closed door for ages. He slowly shut the door behind him and took a cautious step forward. The room was so dark that John could barely see anything. Only a hazy outline appeared before his eyes. Suddenly, a faint light from a candle flickered in the distance, and the room gradually came into focus. It was a long, narrow room with walls covered in cryptic symbols and eerie drawings. The images seemed to hold a strange, mocking laughter, as though they were revealing a hidden truth. John hesitantly approached one of the pictures. A mysterious tree stood prominently within it. "This tree, why?" John whispered, his voice trembling with unease. A voice echoed in the room, soft yet laced with an unsettling edge. "Do you know why?" it asked. Startled, John spun around, searching for the source of the voice, but the room was empty. His breathing quickened, and his heart raced uncontrollably. "That tree," the voice continued, "has come to change your destiny. Your fate stands before you, and you must confront it." John's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. The tree depicted on the walls, the cryptic voice speaking of destiny, everything felt like an enigma he couldn't solve. "I don't want to see this tree," he thought to himself, but his lips failed to utter the words. He stepped further into the room and approached another picture. This one showed a hidden door beneath a tree, its design simple yet ominous. "What's behind this door?" John wondered. "That door leads to your destiny, John," the voice declared again. "You must face it, or remain trapped on this lost path forever." John's heart pounded louder as he hurried towards the door. But just as his hand touched its surface, a cold wave surged through his body, and he froze. The door creaked open slightly, and an eerie laughter echoed from within. "Are you ready?" the voice asked again. John pushed the door open, revealing another room, darker and more foreboding than the last. At the center stood a tree, its roots dripping with blood, and strange, shadowy streams flowed from its branches. "What is this tree?" John asked, his voice shaking. "This is the truth within you, John," the voice replied. "You must face it, or you will remain forever bound to it." John's heart raced, and questions flooded his mind. Is this real? Is this truly happening to me? The tree emitted a faint sound, almost like a whisper, as if it were trying to communicate. "You are what you are," the voice spoke again. "This tree reflects your fate. You must confront your fears to uncover the truth it holds." Fear and anxiety clouded John's thoughts. "What should I do?" he asked himself. "You must confront yourself," the voice urged. "Only then can you understand the truth of this tree." John took another hesitant step forward, approaching the tree. He reached out and touched the blood pooling at its roots. The moment his fingers made contact, a jolt coursed through his body, and a new vision emerged before him. This vision revealed the deepest, darkest secret of John's life. "What is this?" he whispered. "This is your destiny, John," the voice answered. "Now, you must face the truth within yourself." John touched the blood seeping from the tree's roots, and the instant his hand made contact, a jolt ran through his body. A chilling wave coursed through his veins, and suddenly, a vision unfolded before his eyes. It was a part of his life he could never forget, a memory that made his heart stop for a fleeting moment. "What is this?" John murmured, his voice trembling with fear. A whisper emanated from the depths of the tree. "This is a fragment of your destiny, John. The decisions you've made are now revealing themselves through this tree." John's breathing grew heavier. His heart pounded violently, and he found himself consumed by the eerie vision. He couldn't pull himself away, his gaze now fixed on the roots of the tree. A dark stream snaked its way through the roots, as if it held the key to the tree's mysterious truth. John's heart raced faster as he peered deeper, noticing how the blood seemed to flow from within the roots, as though the tree itself was immersed in the essence of his fate. "Is this real?" John thought, his mind spiraling with questions. He yearned to uncover the secret of the tree but was equally paralyzed by the prospect of the pain that truth might bring. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the roots, as if something, or someone, was approaching. John spun around in panic, but nothing was there. "This tree shows the path to your destiny, John," the mysterious voice echoed again. "What you see here will unveil the truth buried within you." John's eyes reflected a storm of fear and curiosity. Gathering his courage, he focused on the roots once more. As his gaze deepened, another vision emerged, a secret so profound that he had never shared it with anyone. "What is this?" John whispered, releasing a breath filled with cold dread. Blood began to flow more vigorously from the roots, trickling along the ground and finding its way into his veins. The moment the blood entered his body, an almost dreamlike state overtook him. His vision blurred, and he found himself lost in a realm of darkness and terror. "The secret you've hidden is surfacing now, John," the voice declared. "You must confront this truth." John's mind grew heavy, his thoughts entangled in the unfolding nightmare. He found himself in a world where his deepest fears had no boundaries. The blood coursing through the tree's roots carried the mysteries of his fate, tightly woven and concealed. "Why is this happening to me?" John questioned himself, but no words escaped his lips. He drifted further into the dream, enveloped by his relentless fear. Then, the roots spoke again, their voice cold and resolute. "You must face it, John. Your destiny resides within you, and only you can uncover it." John's heart pounded with terror. He knew he wasn't ready to face the secrets buried within the tree, yet something within him propelled him closer. "Are you prepared?" the voice asked once more. Steeling himself, John took another step and reached out to touch the roots. The instant his fingers met the gnarled bark, a wave of blinding light surged through him. In that moment, he was transported to another realm, a place where his innermost truths and fears were laid bare for him to confront. John's hand was stained with blood from the roots, and as his body drew closer, his vision was confronted with a new, harrowing reality. The bloodlines coursed through him like an unusual energy, pulling him toward an unknown fate. He felt powerless, as though an invisible force was infiltrating his being. "What is happening to me?" John muttered, his voice trembling with fear so profound that even questioning himself seemed daunting. The sound of blood dripping from the tree roots grew louder, and suddenly, a jarring shock reverberated through him. John felt a violent pull, and before his eyes, another vision began to emerge, a deep, hidden truth from his past. It was a secret that hinted at a reality buried within him. "Is this real?" John whispered, his heartbeat quickening. Another voice echoed from the roots, eerie yet commanding, "This is the truth of your destiny, John. Everything you've hidden, everything buried inside you, is now coming to light." Taking a deep breath, John steeled himself to confront his reality. Inside, a storm of fear raged, and he grappled with the terrifying question, why was all this happening to him? "What are you hiding, John?" a whisper grazed his ears. "What secrets have you buried so deeply that no one knows?" A single question lingered in John's mind, is this my destiny? Am I meant to see all of this? Just then, a light burst forth from the roots, piercing into John's eyes and morphing into a vision. This vision struck him like a blow, unfolding before him like a complete picture of his life's darkest truth. His eyes widened, straining to take it all in. Suddenly, a scene so shocking materialized that his breath caught in his throat. Before him lay a blood-red lake, its surface shimmering with shadows of grief and despair. John clenched his eyes shut, but the vision had already etched itself deep into his heart like a wound. What is this?" he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "This is the truth of your destiny, John," the voice declared. "This lake reflects the fears within you. The secrets you thought were buried have surfaced, and now you must face them." John took another hesitant step toward the roots, where streaks of light glimmered within. Their intensity sent tremors through his body and mind. He realized he was standing before a reality unlike anything he'd ever known, a truth he could no longer run from. "Are you ready?" the voice asked again, now with a fierceness that shook him. Drawing a deep breath, John braced himself to face the truth. His destiny lay before him, and he knew that this path was inevitable. Finally, he reached out and touched the roots. For a moment, the entire world seemed to stand still. Another surge of energy shot through him, propelling him toward an uncharted journey. Within the roots, a door appeared, radiating with an otherworldly glow. John began walking toward it. As he approached, he heard a voice echoing from within, unraveling the mysteries of his fate. "Your truth lies ahead, John. You must confront yourself and the reality of this tree." With trembling hands, John pushed the door open, and beyond it, a new truth awaited, one that would change everything. John saw a door emerging from within the tree and felt an undeniable pull toward it. With every step, his heart pounded harder, and his body seemed to move on its own. He knew this door would confront him with a truth he had long buried, a truth he wasn't ready to face. Yet, something compelled him forward, as if destiny itself was drawing him toward the unknown. "Are you ready, John?" The voice echoed in his mind once again, whispering yet intense. "This door will reveal the truth you've hidden. Behind it lies the secret of your destiny." John's breath quickened. He hesitated, then slowly reached out and pushed the door open. As the door creaked ajar, a dark, shadowy world unfolded before him. It felt like a dream, yet it bore the weight of an unrelenting reality. The colors and shapes in this world shifted constantly, making it seem otherworldly and surreal. "Where am I?" John muttered to himself, but his voice faded into the vast, silent darkness. Fear gripped him, but he couldn't stop moving forward. This was the place he had always felt drawn to, though now he realized it was the stage for his ultimate reckoning. Here, every truth was laid bare, and those truths were deeply entwined with his own being. As John took another step, he found himself face to face with a vision from his past. He saw himself as a child, trembling in fear as he faced his first brush with terror. The memory left a profound mark on his heart, resurfacing with a rawness that overwhelmed him. It was a moment that had clung to him his entire life, shaping the fear he carried within. "What is this?" John whispered, a wave of dread rising from deep within him. "This fear, this truth, why is all this happening?" The voice spoke again, calm yet piercing. "This is the part of your life you can never forget. It is the secret within you that led you to this tree." John's heart raced, the rhythm of his fear quickening with every beat. He wasn't ready to face this truth, but he knew there was no turning back. The haunting memories of his childhood fear loomed before him, demanding his attention with each passing moment. "You must confront this fear, John," the voice urged. "You must accept this truth and understand the secret of this tree." John's eyes reflected his turmoil, fear, unease, and a battle against himself. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, mustering the courage to face what lay ahead. He reassured himself that no matter how difficult, he had to see it through. As he opened his eyes, another vision unfolded. This time, it wasn't just a memory but the ultimate truth of his existence. The blood flowing through the tree's roots now appeared before him, a vivid, pulsating reality. He realized the secret of his destiny was hidden within that blood. "This blood, these roots, they're here to lead you to the truth, John," the voice declared. "This is the blood of your destiny, and it reveals the truth buried inside you." John took one final step forward and touched the blood. The moment his hand connected with it, a chilling wave swept through his body. A torrent of harrowing truths and visions surged before his eyes, truths he had desperately tried to avoid his whole life. "What you've hidden is now in front of you, John," the voice said, steady and resolute. "Now, you must live with it." Taking a deep breath, John accepted the truth flowing through the roots of the tree. He now understood that his destiny's path could only unfold through this tree and its blood-soaked reality. The secret hidden within the blood-soaked roots had become clearer to John. His heart was racing, and fear consumed him, yet he realized the strength within him could guide his path. His hand, still immersed in the blood of the roots, felt a strange surge of energy coursing through his veins. "Is this part of my destiny?" John whispered to himself, his voice trembling slightly. A faint glow appeared in his hand, and suddenly, a new vision unfolded before his eyes. This was the ultimate truth of his life, pointing toward the deepest reality buried within him. "You still haven't understood this secret, John," the voice echoed once more. "This is your destiny. It's the truth hidden inside you, and now you must face it." John withdrew his hand from the blood and observed the scene before him. He was still standing in front of the same tree where his journey had begun, but now he was closer than ever to fully understanding its secrets. "What you see is all within you, John," the voice spoke again, deeper this time. "Your fear, your truth, your destiny, they are all connected to the same roots." John's gaze was fixed. He stood on the challenging path of his destiny, confronting new truths at every moment. A strange energy surged within him, and he knew this force would lead him to his next step. "Is this my time?" John muttered with a hint of regret, yet there was an unusual strength in his voice. He felt a new light radiating within him, as though he had become part of another realm. Suddenly, the roots whispered again, "This is your final test, John. Now you must face yourself. One last step remains on your path to destiny, and that will determine everything." John took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The power within him now pulled him closer to the profound secret of the tree. He knew that whatever lay ahead was an inescapable part of his destiny. "I'm ready," John whispered, plunging his hand into the depths of the roots once more. Another wave coursed through his body, and he felt himself stepping into a new awareness. He moved toward another door, and as he opened it, a new reality awaited him. This truth marked a new beginning, and John knew his path had irrevocably changed. "This is the door that opens the way to your destiny, John," the voice said, its tone now calm and reassuring. John opened the door, and what lay beyond was a sight he had never imagined. It was a world where fear and peace intertwined, and he realized he was now a part of it. "You've embraced this world, John," the voice continued. "Now you must find your place within it." As John stepped through the door, he found himself immersed in a new reality. The secret of his destiny was finally revealed, and he knew his life was about to take an entirely new direction. John opened the door and took a deep breath. Before him stretched an extraordinary world, as if he had stepped into a different reality. The place was neither fully lit nor completely dark. A strange, hazy atmosphere surrounded him, where everything appeared dim and unclear, yet the energy within him was immense. "Where am I?" John questioned himself, feeling an intense uneasiness. He knew this world was a reflection of his inner truth, but facing it felt incredibly difficult. "This is where you must make your final decision, John," the voice echoed again, cold and profound. "You have to uncover your truth here, and your decision will shape the path ahead." A strange turmoil stirred within John. He knew this decision was his ultimate test, but he didn't feel ready for it. He wandered through this unfamiliar world, searching for his way, aware that his choice would change his destiny forever. "What do you want, John?" the voice asked again. "You seek the secret of your destiny, but to uncover it, you must accept your reality." John took a deep breath and closed his eyes. A conflict raged within him, as if he were trapped in this world. His heart pounded, and he realized two paths lay before him, one leading to the complete knowledge of his destiny, and the other offering an escape from this reality, though it would leave him restless forever. "You must choose one of these two paths, John," the voice said. "One will lead you to truth, and the other will drown you in eternal darkness." John took one final step, preparing himself to make the most critical decision of his life. He knew the time had come to face his inner truth. "Are you ready, John?" the voice questioned once more. John opened his eyes and looked at the new world around him. Two paths lay before him, one bathed in light, the other shrouded in darkness. He made up his mind to confront his fears and embrace his destiny. "I'm ready," John said as he stepped toward the illuminated path. As he moved forward, another scene unfolded before him. It was a mirror reflecting his inner truth. He saw all the terrifying moments he had buried deep within himself, the fears that had haunted him for so long. But now, he was ready to face them all. "This is your destiny, John," the voice said, its tone calm and serene, as though John had finally confronted his deepest fears. John took a final deep breath and walked forward with renewed determination. He knew this was the turning point of his journey, and whatever lay ahead was now a part of him. As he completed his journey down the bright path, a new world appeared before him. This was a place where his fears, his reality, and his destiny were all intertwined. He realized that the choice he had made had become his ultimate truth. "You've chosen your destiny, John," the voice said, with a strange tranquility in its tone. A newfound strength filled John as he embraced his inner truth. He understood that his journey had come to an end, and the path of his destiny was now clear.